Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Office 365 Pulse. I haven't seen you guys for like a month, so I was given the honor of doing our quick introduction here. I am joined by my much better counterparts of Tamara and Tom, and we are going to have a fairly short update for you guys. Even though we just got through Ignite, there's not a ton of updates to the actual updated list as far as new features for the roadmap. If you are interested, though, I would highly recommend you can Google it. There's a thing called the Ignite Big Book of News. It's something Microsoft had started putting together about 5 years ago. And it's literally a product by product guide PDF of all of the updates from Ignite. So if you're curious about the new things that came out, Google Big Book of News Ignite 2023. And it's literally a PDF Microsoft publishes of like product by product by product, what changes are coming out. So super helpful, something we definitely liked, something we definitely use a lot. But for now, this is the Office 365 Pulse or M365 Pulse. So we're taking a look at the Microsoft 365 roadmap changes. As always, we'll be starting with in development, and the wonderful Tamara will be starting us off.
Why, thank you, Adam.
The lady in red.
Ta-da! I was looking at this and I thought it was interesting. Office documents have a new default theme. This is coming out in December 2023. So a new default theme is coming to Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook across your endpoints. That just sounds rude. The new theme will include the new default font. I don't know how to say this. APTOS?
Aptos.
Aptos. A new color palette. I don't think I like Aptos because it has a serif on it.
Actually, I kind of like it, but
and updated default line weights. Note the roadmap item was inadvertently marked as rolling out, and we apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused, but it ain't ready yet.
Too funny.
So I had that one, and then the only other one that I had in development was Clipchamp for SharePoint. It's a premium feature. This is rolling out in December of 2023 to the commercial instance. So Clipchamp is a premium feature that helps users take control of their content and take it to the next level. So with Clipchamp Premium, users can easily apply brand, fonts, colors, logos with a brand kit and add top-tier assets for commercial use and export crisp, well-defined visuals as 4K.
Yeah, so I did a write-up on this for our managed services customers. It's basically like the equivalent of like Camtasia, but not quite as fancy and web-based. So it's video editing software. So you can go in and add like logos and add stuff like that to make your content, your videos look more professional. So think about intro and outro screens. The type of stuff you can do with basic video editing is now going to become as part of a feature of 365, which is kind of nice.
It sounds like
great.
It sounds like Clipchamp Premium though is kind of something beyond just regular Clipchamp.
It's an extra licensed version that's going to allow you to do some additional things too. I would assume so, based off of Tamara's description there.
Okay.
So it does say that it's a standalone SKU, as well as an add-on to E3, E5, and the Business Standard and the Business Premium.
And that probably just means like she talked about some of the features there. I assume some of the more enterprise fancy features of video editing, they're wanting you to pay for the product for. But some of the basic stuff is still coming to your default M365 licensing, which is cool.
Yeah, because I know they talked about the fact that when they went from Stream Classic to Stream on SharePoint OneDrive, they lost the ability to do like trimming on the front end and back end. And they always talked about, but we'll be getting Clipchamp and it'll be available to you and you'll be able to use that instead. And I got the impression that that portion of Clipchamp was going to be built in. Or there was going to be a version of Clipchamp that was available for everybody just as part and parcel. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
That's all I got.
You want to do anything, Tom?
Sure, I'll go ahead and mention a couple. One is Microsoft Stream Copilot. Wow, fancy that. Everything is Copilot. Copilot in Stream leverages the large language models, AI technology, to help you quickly get the insights you need from Stream on SharePoint videos. So Copilot in Stream, you're quickly and effectively summarizing any videos with a transcript or ask deep dive questions for topics you need to understand. So again, this is only available if you bought the Microsoft 365 Copilot license, which is rather expensive, and you have to have at least 300 seats to do it, which still frustrates people to no end. But
You don't have
this is
$9,000 to spend just out of nowhere every month?
I'm
big
fresh out.
sale. So that's coming up. Again, they're rolling Copilot out to pretty much every offering in the Microsoft 365 environment. This is what they're doing with it with Stream. Last one that I wanted to bring up, and I find this is interesting, and that is Microsoft 365 Backup. So the backup service is a product offering spanning across the OneDrive, SharePoint, and Exchange Online services, providing customers with a consistent cross-product solution to recover their M365 data from cataclysmic events, such as at-scale ransomware attacks or malicious accidental data deletion corruption by end users. The backup service is available on a pay-as-you-go basis and can be enabled through the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So I'm curious if this is also what they've talked about in terms of the Microsoft 365 archiving solution.
It's not.
It's not. It's different.
Yeah, so this is super
Okay.
interesting to me because I do technical sales and have for a very long time just due to
Right.
the nature of my job. You get asked about backup in Office 365 and M365 way more than you'd think. And I kind of treated it, and Microsoft kind of treated it as a relic of a past system. When you hosted your own Exchange server, hosted your own SharePoint server, so on and so forth, those servers you physically owned. And so having that data backed up was super important. You would kind of argue, and Microsoft did for a long time, that backups were unnecessary due to the ridiculous redundancy and versioning that they had. But there are isolated cases like ransomware and stuff like that, that versioning maybe didn't help you because the system wasn't down, but modified and then it replicated over. Now, technically speaking, I've done a couple of these escalations with Microsoft. They could typically actually go back in time. So for instance, if you talk about Exchange topology, there is something called the dumpster, which is a hidden folder on the back end of Exchange that still exists, but it's inaccessible to the end user. It only exists, like, you know, the recover deleted items that you can go through and get. So there is essentially a representation of that on the back end of the server. That's even more like when you delete stuff from recover deleted items, it goes into the dumpster. And that's something that end users can't access. So I've gone through with escalations from Microsoft before where they could go back. They typically have 14 days of backups of the stuff going on Exchange. Might even be up to 30 on Exchange Online now, where they've had to go on into like previous day stuff, but they charge per hour on their engineers' time to do it. And it's not a cheap thing.
No.
So the idea of still having a backup is something that people still ask about. Archiving is an entirely different solution. Archiving is putting stuff into storage that you can go through and retrieve at a later date for like records retention. This is really about, like they said, like malicious data deletion or ransomware that shuts your system down and stuff like that. It's the idea that through the normal system processes, the data isn't corrupted, the server's still there, but like something has happened to the core side or your ability to access it.
Right.
And again, this is still something that's requested fairly often going through the sales process. It makes sense that Microsoft eventually put together a solution for this. I'm sure some people will do it. I'm sure it will also be fairly expensive to go through because almost certainly they will charge you by the gig or by the megabyte on what you're going through and doing. And if you're trying to get all of your users, all of their SharePoint storage, all of OneDrive, all of Exchange, I imagine you're going to be talking about several thousands of dollars a month to go through and do this to have that backup. So, but I mean, again, that's the equivalent of enterprise products too of that level. So,
right, that's the thing. I mean, they've always, to date, it seems like they've treated that kind of a feature as, oh, we have third-party vendors who do that.
Yeah, so they have
and
stuff
now
like
they're stepping in and going
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and now we're going to step into that world too. So I'm sure the
large
vendors who
Microsoft
do
has
this.
a history of doing that, right?
Oh, yeah,
like we all know third-party partners that had some part of the market that they were going through and doing that. Microsoft eventually developed a feature to essentially price
Took
them out of the
business.
market, right?
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what happens and what goes. I mean, I can remember, I'm sure you guys do too, when Microsoft first started putting development into the SharePoint migration tool, several of my friends that worked for, AvePoint and ShareGate and stuff like that were not very happy with what was going on because they were thinking that their business was getting cannibalized. So I agree with you, kind of interesting, but I do think this is a fairly commonly requested feature.
Okay.
And if it's something that I get asked about 4 or 5 times a year, I'm sure someone on Microsoft that deals with exclusively technical sales calls could ask for that way more than I do. So yeah, definitely interesting to see. Anything else you wanted to bring up, Tom?
Nope, I'm good. I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about the backup one, which I obviously did in conjunction with you. I'll mention one other one that I thought was kind of interesting. So Azure Active Directory cross-tenant manager synchronization. So first and foremost, I think this is kind of an interesting dichotomy. Microsoft Arena, it's no longer Azure Active Directory. It's Microsoft Intra and Microsoft Intra ID.
Good luck with trying to get that name to come out.
I'm about to say, and I think it's kind of interesting because this is perfectly representative of Microsoft, that an update on their own roadmap that their product teams are doing still has a different name than the marketing name that they chose to switch over, which is why everything's such a mess, right? But anyways, what the feature specifically was Microsoft Azure Active Directory cross-tenant manager synchronization. The idea is if you have more than one tenant being managed outside of a central company. So this is most likely going to be applicable to companies that have acquisitions and mergers and things like that, where you have a situation where maybe logistically speaking, your user bases are separate, but the organizational structure is starting to get more intertwined. It's basically going to allow you to, in the default, what the original AD schema was that synced up from your local Active Directory and to Azure AD, there wasn't a value for the manager field. And that's a feature that matters in Azure AD, because if you have a manager field going through and set for that and it's syncing properly, that's how they do stuff like, oh, well, if we unlicense the user, we're going to give the manager access to their OneDrive and stuff like that. So in the early days, when we had to go through and do this, you had to manually go through and set that manager field for people in Azure AD. This is basically going to make it that a new schema will basically go into place, and configurations will basically start using the manage attribute. But the interesting thing about it is not only will we be doing that, but you can now potentially do this cross-tenant, which goes to the idea of doing multi-tenant sharing, to where, let's say I have my manager set as Tom, and our both Planet's tenant and his company's tenant are set up to share, then it can be aware that Tom is a user, identify them as an Azure AD account in the same way it does normal with cross-tenant collaboration, and actually set Tom as my value for the manager, which is kind of interesting that they're doing that. Clearly, they had to get this request from some people in order for them to go through and implement it. I think it's a kind of narrow use case, but hey, it's kind of interesting that they're doing it, and that the technology has gotten to the point with cross-tenant collaboration, identifying the Azure AD object and stuff like that to allow it to happen. So not groundbreaking. I doubt there's anyone that's listening to this that even ever is going to use this feature, but the tech nerd in me thought it was kind of interesting.
Cool.
So moving into rolling out is even smaller than in development this time. So we'll go ahead and start with Tom this time, then go to Tamara. And launch is even smaller than that. So anything in rolling out that you're interested in, Tom?
Yeah, I only had one thing that I really flagged that I felt that I could talk about with any level of interest and or knowledge, and that is Outlook sort by category. So this feature allows users to sort their emails by category and inbox and other folders. It will help users stay focused and organized by allowing them to group related emails together directly in the message list. This update will be available in the new Outlook for Windows and the web-based version of Outlook. I'm noticing pretty much every change that's coming out for Outlook right now. Those are the two that's affecting. The new Outlook for Windows, which I believe is like the Windows 11 type email client, and then the web-based version of Outlook. The old, hey, this is Outlook 2019 or whatever the year is that they're putting there. That one's really not getting a whole lot of love anymore. So this is something that could be really good to be able to categorize what you see your inbox as, rather than just being straight, here it is grouped by dates and stuff like that. So take a look for that. It is rolling out. It's supposed to be rolled out in November, which means they've got about 3 more days to pull it off.
Anything else?
Great.
Tamara, you have anything you want to add?
Just that Microsoft Viva is going to allow you to apply brand colors across all connection endpoints using SharePoint themes or custom themes. So Viva Connections will offer a new set of theming options to reflect brand color consistency across desktop, tablet, and mobile experiences. So with this new functionality, customers will have the choice to apply existing SharePoint themes or a custom theme to their connections experience, as well as the SharePoint home site hosting the connections experience.
Should make for a nice color coordinated, looks all the same. Is it all the same? It's not two different jarring experiences, so that's good.
So I have a couple small things. One, they're now adding single sign-on Azure AD support, which again, still calling it Azure AD instead of Microsoft Intra. But single sign-on support for Windows 365. So I like seeing this for a couple reasons. One, so the single sign-on experience through Azure AD is basically the process of what you used to have ADFS to do that you can now do with Azure AD and single sign-on. You basically install a lightweight client on your domain controllers that serve your local AD, and then do through some trusted sites and stuff, basically go in and set some of the Microsoft logins, and then it can basically cache a login on your system. So that way when you log into Windows, it already has your login, and you don't have to log in when you go to Office 365 through the web or open up your Word. All that's already handled through one system to your domain controllers and this stuff. So happy to see that. Glad they're bringing the functionality to Windows 365. I've been harping on for about 2 years now on this show that Windows 365 is going to potentially be a pretty significant player in the future for people that want secure, controlled environments in ways that you had to do stuff with Azure AD before, which not Azure AD, Azure AVD. And Azure AVD to me had a pretty high barrier of entry. It was costly. It was complicated to set up. It was complicated to administer. And there's a lot of stuff going on there. Being able to simplify that into Windows 365 deployments, which are cheaper, much better at scale, and much easier to run. This is just another enterprise feature coming out there. So cool to see that. And then I just wanted to make an acknowledgement as well to the Outlook sort by category functionality. I found this one funny. I grew up supporting email in my IT world. I would say only about 1 in 20 people use categories in the email, but you will pry those categories from those people's cold, dead fingers. The people who use categories love them some categories. And categories integration with the cloud was not as good as traditional on-prem stuff. I've dealt with many an executive that used categories to organize their email that were unhappy with the feature set that's available in Exchange Online versus what they had in their traditional on-prem Exchange environment. This is just an update for them, bringing more functionality of stuff like being able to search by categories to some of the Exchange Online functionality. And again, 95% of us will never care about this or use this, but the 5% that do are so happy right now with this update that they're beside themselves. Like Christmas came early for those people, so I'm happy for them. Tom, you want to just cover the 2 launch things just because there's only 2? We'll hit them briefly and then be done with the show.
I would love to. The first one is Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal, Insider Risk Management, SharePoint, Site Selection Enhancements. 14 commas to get to the final thing that they're actually doing there. This is basically, it's interest. Oh, this is launched. I'm sorry. I was mentally thinking cancel. I'm like, it doesn't say why it's canceled. This is launched, people.
We have
in
no
November.
cancel this week.
With this update, Insider Risk Management admins can add any SharePoint sites as priority content or exclude certain SharePoint sites in Insider Risk Management by searching the site names or using the exact URL. So basically, this is giving you a little bit more control over what you've got going with your Insider Risk Management stuff. If you need to have sites that are affected or aren't affected, you're going to have a little bit more flexibility there. The final one that they have is Microsoft Viva, Search in Viva Connections Mobile for iOS. So this just adds a search entry point and a new tailored experience for Viva Connection users on mobile in iOS. Both of those are launched. The first one is actually launched across the board to all the tenants. The last one for iOS is just on worldwide. And that's the entire launch experience.
Cool. Well, we hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving if you're here with us in the States. If you're in Canada, you had fake Thanksgiving like a month ago, so you don't count. We have a month coming up where it's always interesting this last little bit of the year. Everyone realizes, oh crap, I only have a month left and I need to use my PTO before I lose it. So I'm sure it'll be kind of interesting. We'll probably have various combinations of us four over the next several weeks and stuff like that. But hopefully everyone's enjoying this time of the year. It's getting colder. Hopefully you stay warm. And besides that, definitely encourage everyone, like I said, to check out the Big Book of News from Ignite. If you haven't seen it before, it's a wonderful thing to have. You also, I believe, can still register for Ignite even though it's closed. If you haven't done that, do it. I cannot tell you how many slides and presentations I have stolen things from Ignite over the years. It's a wonderful resource to have if you need to like present internally to your company on some feature you're rolling out. What better slides to get than ones made by the product team that made that? So it's a great thing to have and have available.
Stolen is kind of a harsh statement. I would say appropriate.
Yeah, really
Borrowed,
co-opted. I mean, and borrowed could work too. Endorsed might
permanently
be a better
borrowed.
way. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
stolen works. Go with it.
I don't try to play it off as my own. It's just, hey, I got these. Sometimes I'll even include the link. Hey, I got these from here. But yeah.
Sounds great.
Regardless, guys, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everyone.